What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you've never been here before, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, hit the notification bell. Everybody else, welcome back. For those of you that have never been here before, I served 17 years in the New York prison system, most of those years in the maximum security prison system, and we're going to talk about that prison system today. This video is going to be about how regular people end up in the prison system. Someone asked me that question in the comments. Did I ever meet anybody in there that wasn't really a criminal and made one mistake and ended up in the maximum security prison system? And I have met dozens upon dozens of guys like that. So before we get into that, my last video was about what do lifers do in prison? What do people with a life sentence do all day in prison? And I explained a lot about the prisoners that serve a life sentence. So I would like to state that right after that video yesterday, I received an email from a friend of mine that I was in prison with who was sentenced to 25 to life. And he sent me an email to tell me that he was granted parole at his first parole board. He served 25 years. He went to his first parole board and he was granted release, which means he will be released within the next 60 days. So before we talk about the regular guys in the prison system, let me explain something about that. I won't tell you my friend's name out of respect. He hasn't given me permission to do that. But when I was in prison, we were actually double bunked together. We had to live in the same cell together for a few months. And we spent about a year together, 18 months together in the prison system. He was in prison for a double murder. For taking the life of two people. So a lot of people would say he should be in prison for the rest of his life. He killed two people. How did he make the first parole board? Right? And some people say he should be buried under the jail and he should never be released. And what I say to you ignorant people that say that is, you don't know the circumstances of his case. Do you know the circumstances of his case? So if you don't know the circumstances of his case, don't say that, right? How do you know that somebody didn't rape and torture his mother? And in response, in a rage, he went and took the life of those two people. Then should he be in prison for the rest of his life? That's not what happened. But I'm saying it's a possibility. It could have happened. How do you know someone didn't kidnap his daughter and sexually molest his daughter and he went absolutely crazy? And he served 25 years for taking the life of the two men that did that to his 7-year-old daughter. Should he be in prison for the rest of his life? That didn't happen either. I'm not going to tell you what happened because he hasn't given me permission to talk about his case yet. Okay? But what I'm saying is every case has its own set of circumstances. And in this case, because I do know the case, I can see why the parole board has decided to release my friend. He had never been in trouble a day before in his life. He is a highly intelligent man. He was never arrested. He was never on probation. He was never in jail. He was a college student who was highly intelligent. And all I'm going to tell you is something happened until he gives me, maybe when he comes home, he'll come onto the channel. I already sent him an email back and asked him if he may be interested in that. But of course, his mind is in a million places right now. But the reason I'm telling you that is to tell you that even with a life sentence, as I explained in my previous video, if there's a number before it, 10 to life, 15 to life, 25 to life, you must serve the minimum and then go to the parole board. Sometimes they don't release you. Sometimes they do. Once they looked at him, they looked at his criminal case. They looked at his institutional record. They looked at he didn't have a history. But more than that, they looked at the case itself and they decided to release him. This is somewhat more of a rarity because usually when people have a murder case, a lot of times they don't make some make the first parole board. A lot of times they don't. When you have a double murder, then it becomes even more rare. But I know a few cases where it happens. Depends on the circumstances. So I'm glad to see that my buddy's coming home. I wouldn't say that about everyone. I would tell you that even as a man who served 17 years incarcerated, there's an alarming number of men in there that shouldn't be released. There's an alarming number of men in there that are dangerous. There's an alarming number of men in there that can't live in society and be in public. You know what I mean? And they may not even be murderers. People with more simplistic charges still shouldn't be released because they haven't changed at all and they're a complete menace to society. Those people exist as well. But in this case with my friend, I can almost guarantee you this guy will never be in trouble ever again for the rest of his life. Because when we looked at him in prison, we were wondering what he was doing there in the first place until you heard the circumstances and then you understood why everything happened. Even if you didn't condone it, you understood a lot more why this person flipped out. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's get to the topic of, wait, here we go. I gotta wet the beak a little. Excuse me. Let's get to the topic of regular guys in prison. We're talking about men that didn't live a criminal lifestyle, people that you can refer to. They're often referred to as squares. I don't refer to them as squares. I refer to them as intelligent people, but people who live a normal life, smart, most of them. But have I met those guys in prison? As I said, I met dozens of them in prison, and you come across guys in the prison system, and you're like, what is this guy doing here? He doesn't have a criminal bone in his body. And the reason I'm telling this story is because it can happen to you. And it can happen to you if you don't make the proper choices and decisions in life. And it can happen like that. It happens that fast. You wake up in the morning, you're living a normal day, everything is fine, wife and kids at home, a career, everything is great, no problems, you're not doing any drugs, you're not an alcoholic, everything's fine, and the next thing you know, you got your hands behind your back in handcuffs and you're on your way going to jail. How did that happen? Well, it happens real quick when people get out of the car for road rage. Happens every day when people get out of the car for road rage. Next thing you know, someone gets out of the car, you get into an argument with them, they cut you off, you're a tough guy, you don't want, you're taking it personal, you get out too, you guys start scrapping with one another, you punch the guy in the face, he falls down, cracks his head open, now you're getting arrested for murder. Happened in 30 seconds. Never been in trouble a day in your life. Maybe they arrest you for manslaughter. You got to cop out. You know you're going to lose. You end up with 7 years in prison, 10 years in prison. Or maybe you don't think you should go to prison at all and you take them to trial and now you end up with 15 years. Road rage is a bad one. I met a lot of guys in prison that were in there for road rage. Guys that had never been in trouble for their life. Ended up with felony assault with a weapon. Guy gets out of his car with a pipe. Couple of kids cut him off. He gets out. The kids start yelling, banging on his window. He gets out with a pipe, hits the kid in the head. Next thing you know, he's got 12 years to serve. Right? Guy was living a normal life before that. But with a lapse of discipline, a lapse of self-control, he's gone. You know where I've seen a lot of it? Domestically. Guys that have never been in trouble in their life get involved in a domestic abuse, spousal abuse. Guy is fighting with his wife. They're getting into a big argument. Next thing you know, he hauls off. Never hit his wife before, but in the heat of the moment, he cracks her in the face. Neighbors call 911. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I know one guy, never been in trouble a day in his life. Went through the army, finished his time in the army, never been in trouble a day before in his life. He finds out that his wife is being unfaithful to him. They get into an argument in the kitchen. It gets really heated between husband and wife. They're screaming and yelling. His wife hits him, and his wife hits him. He grabbed the knife right off of the kitchen counter and swung it. Killed her. They offered him 8 years. But he was petrified to go to prison. He did not want to go to prison. He should have took the 8 years because he ended up with 25 to life for murder. Now you say, oh, that's a crime of passion. That's this. They didn't find it a crime of passion. He didn't catch his wife in the act. They were arguing over her being unfaithful, and everything got so heated and crazy. The second he grabbed the knife and stabbed her, this is a personal friend of mine. The second he grabbed the knife and stabbed her, he couldn't believe what he did. He couldn't believe that it happened. He ended up with 25 to life. He didn't make his first parole board. He made his second parole board. They made him do 27 years. Saw a lot of people in there for domestic cases. These were regular people that didn't live a criminal lifestyle. They weren't out assaulting people, robbing banks, selling drugs. My buddy Kevin, I've spoken to Kevin before. Kevin was a music teacher. He taught music inside of the school system. In a private school, he was making $100,000 a year. Never in trouble a day in his life, ever. He was a square. He was a humble guy, a quiet guy, very mild-mannered and polite. But he had 2 drinks at a wedding, and he was driving home, and he hit someone, and he killed him. Hold this 7 years down right there. Kevin used to look around at all of us. He said, how the hell did I end up with you guys? This guy murdered 2 people. This guy's a violent carjacker. This guy's a bank robber. He says, I was driving drunk. I didn't even mean it. He said, they put me in here with you psychopaths. That's where you'll end up. They don't separate people by crime in the prison system. You need to understand that. Drunk drivers don't just go with drunk drivers. And everyone's mixed together. So I could be in prison for a murder or a double murder, and they put you in the cell with me in a 2-man cell, and you're there for assault. Everyone's mixed together. When you go in prison, you're with robbers, rapists, carjackers, murderers, child molesters. Everybody's together. That's what you'll be subjected to when you're in there. So yes, there's a lot of people in prison that didn't live a criminal lifestyle and end up in the prison system because they don't make proper choices and decisions, and they're not in control of. Let me give you an example of something else I spoke about. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. Have you ever heard that saying? I'm going to explain it to you. Your brain, between stimulus and response, there's a space. Okay? So let me give an example of a drug addict. Let's say you're a drug addict and you want to go clean, and you've been clean for 30 days. You're doing great. You're abstinent, and you walk into your friend's house and you see your drug of choice on the table, right? The first thing that's going to happen is your brain is going to get stimulated. That's what happens. That's the human reaction. The chemicals start flowing. You start to feel that feeling in your stomach. Oh, man, right? And then after your brain gets stimulated, there's going to be a response. You're going to respond. I can't tell how you're going to respond. Your response could be, I might as well do a little. Give me a little. Your response may be to tell your friend, yo, listen, I don't need to see that here. Put that away. Do me a favor. I'm doing really good. I don't want to see that. Or your response could be to turn around and walk out of the house. But when your brain is stimulated, there's going to be a response. But between stimulus and response, there's a space there. The first thing that I try and teach people is that space exists. You must acknowledge the space between stimulus and response. The second thing I try to teach people is that they have the ability to control that space. The dangerous thing about this space is that sometimes it may be only a fraction of a second. You see the drugs and let me grab it. You didn't control that space at all. You didn't acknowledge that it's there. There's a space there. Let me make my decision. That's why it's important to recognize it, right? That's why it's important to recognize the space. Okay. And so once you recognize that, a lot of people call it the space of free will. You can call it whatever you want, but that's the space where we make all our choices and decisions in life. And if you can't control that space with discipline is not something you're born with or without. Discipline is a choice. You make a choice to be disciplined. Okay? Let's say you walk in the house and your wife is in bed with another man. Your brain is definitely going to get stimulated. And you're going to want to attack that person right away, or attack the wife right away. You're infuriated. You just walked in the house and your spouse is in bed with someone. You're going to freak out. Your brain is stimulated. It's on overdrive. But you better control that space and respond the correct way. Now, people say, I don't care. If I walk into that situation, I'm taking her and I'm unaliving her. I'm unaliving him. You can do that. You can do that. But remember the repercussions. The repercussions is you'll be charged with murder. You'll be put in a pair of handcuffs. You'll be taken down to the police station. You'll be charged with murder. And you can go to trial. You could say that it was a crime of passion. Maybe you'll get 7 years, 8 years, or you can go to trial, end up with 25 to life for murder, or you can grab her and beat the crap out of her and end up with a felony assault charge and get 7 to 15 years. That's possible. Pardon me. Or your response could be to turn around and walk out. See you later. That's what I would do these days. I'm out of here. Because I know the severe repercussions on the other side. Is the old simplistic saying, we need to think before we act. I gave you 2 examples. I'll give you one more little one. Someone can bump into you on the street. You could feel that they bumped into you a little too hard. Maybe you're on the subway, you're going to work. This guy bumps into you, gives you a little elbow. Man, stop getting so close to me, man. Back up. Boy, your brain gets stimulated. My brain gets stimulated. Especially when someone does that to me. I was a fighter my whole life. I don't want no one pushing me and touching me like that. You push me like that, you're going to find out the hard way right now. But you can't do that anymore. You got to be smart, especially in today's society. The reason I'm giving you this message is to let you know that sometimes things happen that fast. Things happen that quickly. In my case, I can say this honestly. I was arrested for the charge of murder in the 2nd degree. I didn't wake up that morning with the intention of killing anyone. I didn't wake up that morning with the intention of hurting anyone. To tell you the truth, it was bound to happen in my life. I was a menace to society. I was completely out of control. And I was under the influence of narcotics. There were many reasons why I was living my life like that. But I'm not getting into this whole psychological aspect of my behavior. But the point was, I wasn't living in a controlled life. And that morning that I woke up, when I found myself in this situation, my intention was to go punch someone in their face. That was my intention. Wasn't my place to do it. I was going to go punch someone in the face that broke into my friend's business and went after the safe in the back office to steal the money. Because me, being the type of guy that's always trying to save the world and do anything for his friends, I said, I'm going to go find the guy and punch him in the face. Tell him stay away from the business. Don't come near it anymore. And then the next thing you know, I was standing over a dead body and asking myself, how in the world did that happen? And I knew I was screwed. I figured I was going to die in the prison system. I took off and went on the run, not to avoid it, because I was petrified. I ran to North Carolina for a little while, then I ran to Miami for a little while, then I ran to Texas, and I was apprehended halfway across the country in Texas when I woke up with a shotgun pressed against my mouth from the Texas Rangers. And I said, my life is over. All because I didn't control the space. I didn't live with discipline. You guys got to live right, because yes, it can happen to you. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not saying that you're going to walk down the street as an innocent person and the police are just going to come scoop you up and put a pair of handcuffs on you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you just need to be in control of your behavior and realize that life is precious. When you go into prison, you lose everything. Your family starts dying off on you. The so-called friends you have vanish. 99% of them will vanish. You will never hear from them again. You'll be dreaming about driving a car, dreaming about riding a motorcycle, dreaming about going fishing, dreaming about walking on the beach, dreaming about spending time with your wife, with your kids, or with your friends, dreaming about walking through the crowd in New York City. Those were all the things I used to dream about when I was laying in prison, realizing I blew it all and I never thought I was going to make it home again. And sometimes you can get in a situation where you won't make it home again. There's a lot of guys who aren't coming home, guys who made a mistake. As I said, I'm going to get ready to close. There's a lot of dangerous people in prison. There's a lot of people that should be in prison. There's a lot of people that are too dangerous to be in society. But guess what? There's a lot of guys in prison that are pretty good guys. You may find that hard to believe, but there's guys in prison that are some good guys that made some bad mistakes one time. It's not the majority. I'm not going to sit here and say that's the majority. I'm not some liberal coddler who likes to coddle people and think prisoners should be free. And I'm a man that did 17 years. If I was on the parole board, I probably wouldn't release a large percentage of them because I know what's in there. But there are some good guys in there. Guys that had a bad day. This is why it's so important to live the right way. That's my message to you. I'm not trying to preach to you either, man. I'm really telling you like it is. It's important to live the right way. It's worth it to work hard. If you're young, concentrate, set a goal, man. Really set a goal, make a plan. As I said in a previous video, it's not about hope and change. Hope is not a destination. Change is not necessarily always for the good. You need a plan, man. And you could be whatever you want to be. As I said, I'm not preaching to you. But make a plan for your life, stick to it, work hard, take care of your family, take care of your friends, take care of your neighbor, live right, stay drug free. No one makes good decisions under the influence of drugs. If you're on drugs, get off them. And if you're drinking, stop drinking. What do you need drugs and alcohol for? I'm ending with this for real now. This may sound corny, but this is true. Listen to this. Listen to this. When you look up, you think you're looking in outer space. If you look up at the moon, you look up at the stars, you think you're looking up into outer space. You're not looking up into space. The planet Earth is floating through space, just like those other planets. We're all floating through space. And here we are, this little creature, human beings, the size of an ant, sitting on this big mud ball that's spinning at 1,100 miles an hour. The Earth is spinning at 1,100 miles an hour through outer space. Nothing is smashing into us. Nothing is hitting us. We're just flying through space at over 3,000 miles an hour, spinning at 1,100 miles an hour. This thing called gravity is keeping us here. And you need drugs to feel better? All you got to do is think of that. How crazy is that? Nobody knows how we got here. Nobody knows when it started. Nobody knows when it will end. That's pretty amazing. We're lucky to be here. Embrace it. Live right. Love you guys. I know I'm running my mouth now. I'm out of here. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.